guys wonder why I hate women.
Secure the ballistics.
I might as well get something out of it, right?
My balls from getting bigger, you know.
Myth, thanks to the 10 bucks. Not to be the autistic guy, recommends you watch every Matthewmatosis video, but he made a video critical of God of War 2018 on release. Sadly, he doesn't drop any hard R's this time, though. Oh, speaking of which, you did remind me, though. I'm gonna, since chat is always bored of everything all the time, Firelink conspiracy. The worst video essay ever made, Matthewmatosis hack. Holy shit, I didn't know we're on that level of clickbait. I mean, I've been critical of his videos myself, but I think they're still good. They're still good. I've just been a bit critical. Oh boy, this will be interesting.
The Souls games, and this fact is made abundantly clear in his video titled The Last Soul
I forgot
Art
this
of
guy's
Demon
accent
Souls,
sound like
in
this.
which he tries to make the point that Demon Souls was unique and innovative. Matthewmatosis is not some random YouTuber. He is, perhaps, one of the most influential video game critics in the platform's history. And his most popular videos are those in which he talks about the Souls games.
That's not true, though.
They've helped shape the popular understanding of these games. So much so, that to this day, you can see terrible arguments which he made in his videos, being repeated uncritically, tirelessly so.
That is true.
This
That is
critique
true.
is long overdue.
That is definitely true. People will repeat what he says uncritically.
Unlike him,
that is
he will
definitely
amply
true.
substantiate each of mine. He'll allow his arguments to be presented in full before responding.
It's not
That is
just the
true.
level-by-level design which suffers in Dark Souls 2 compared to other installments. It's the accessibility of different areas and the placement of many items too. This is another reason why comparisons between the design of Demon Souls and Dark Souls 2 are insulting to the former. In Demon Souls, once the player finished the first stage of Boletaria, they then had 5 levels immediately available for them at any point.
Dark Souls 2 is actually the least linear game in the trilogy, and it is also less linear than Demon Souls. In Demon Souls, it's optional
that's a
tutorial
weird critique
accepted.
of Dark Souls
You are
2.
forced to clear the first area of Boletaria Castle before accessing
Yeah,
the
Dark
other
Souls 2, you can
Archstones.
actually choose which path you want to go on from like near the beginning. Was he really? See, I haven't seen that video in forever.
The Last Giants, the Pursuer, the Old Dragon Slayer, the Dragon Rider, the Royal Rat Vanguard, Nazca, the Rotten, and the Twin Dragon Riders, both of which are mid-game boss fights. Hava, which is a DLC boss, and even the Dark Lurker, which is a secret endgame boss. Imagine if you could fight the Nameless King as your first boss in Dark Souls 3, or Ebrietas in Bloodborne.
It is true.
Each level
You
had
can give
different
Dark
pros
Souls
and
2
cons.
that
There
it's
were
probably the
incentives
most
to go
open
to any
one
of them,
in the
except
series,
arguably the swamp.
in terms
but
of
even
what
then,
order
the player
you do
isn't
things in.
blocked from exploring the swamp if they wish. Item placement in Demon Souls was carefully balanced to give each world a reasonably fair share of useful items which players would eventually be aware of for subsequent playthroughs. Dark Souls 1 attempted to carry on this legacy but did a somewhat worse job. There were several areas available right from the start, but not as much incentive to go to them.
Were there less incentives to go to middle or late game areas at the start of a playthrough in Dark Souls than in Demon Souls? Did Dark Souls do a worse job? He's doubling your flask capacity, or getting one of the best weapons for the first game cycle, the Gravelord's Sword. Not a good incentive to explore the catacombs early. You can complete the area very easily as an experienced player by using intended scoops. And Pinwheel is not just easy, he can be soloed by Paladin Leroy. Here is a clip of me completing the catacombs with a fresh character.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. This I definitely disagree with. He is doing an autism right now,
Leroy managed
and I can't
the Pinwheel
alt
before I was able
tab.
to
This is
hit
a
him
terrible
single
game to
time.
be pausing videos
The
to
boss drops
counterpoint.
15,000 souls.
Hold on.
The Rite of Kindling.
I'll hold on to this
one
point for a
humanity,
second.
and a Homeward Bone, which allows me to return to the shrine scot-free and level my character 13 times. He also drops one of 3 masks, each having a very useful special effect. He's going to the Darkroot Basin early, to get the Grasscrest Shield,
Okay, I'll give
and
him the
potentially the
Pinwheel
Black
one.
Knight Halberd, the strongest twinkling weapon, less useful than, say, going to the Shrine of Storms to get the Crescent Falchion.
In Dark Souls 2, Majula only opens into 2 locations at the beginning, but the sad thing is it actually connects to 5. The Grave of Saints, Huntsman's Copse and Shaded Woods are all sealed off until the player completes at least some.
Okay. Now to give my counter argument in defense of Matthewmatosis. The first example the Firelink conspiracy gave is something you would only know if you've played the game either multiple times or engaged in online discussions of how to speedrun the game. There's, in Demon Souls, what Matthew was talking about, but he didn't He didn't elaborate on it because his style of video doesn't really exist anymore. Everything, even my stuff, I'm saying this unironically in defense of Mauler slightly, is that everything became long man shit after a certain period of time because there's so many points you need to extrapolate on. Assuming this isn't taken out of context, Matthewmatosis just didn't clarify that in Demon Souls specifically, every single Archstone area dropped certain types of items that were the main gimmick of that area. The first area drops grass. The second area drops stones. The third area dropped... I'm blanking at the moment what the gimmick was. But you get with the point I'm going with this, right? Each different area. The fourth zone was souls. The skeleton guys, the storm place, it was every enemy dropped a high amount of souls. The mine place was the stones. First area was grass. You get what I mean, right? And then the counter example in Firelink Conspiracy's video is saying a bunch of, unintended out of sequence shit in Dark Souls 1 that the developers never intended. That's not the same thing. So that's a false equivalency. But I will concede on the Pinwheel point that you could go there to kill Pinwheel to, get the dad mask is usually what people get for Giant Dad, right? But you get the point. What Matthewmatosis is talking about is the intended game design of Demon Souls is that each area had a gimmick. Whereas in Dark Souls 1, going to the catacombs first is an option. I mean, it obviously was intended to the point that you can go there, but to specifically do that to get a powerful weapon right at the beginning of the game was not the intent of From Software, So yeah, I don't really like that point. All right, I'll keep playing it.
Some of the other areas are gathers up around 12,000 souls to buy the cat ring. There's no good reason why this should be the case, other than trying to ensure inexperienced players end up starting on the right path.
Oh my god,
this
is a record number of crashes of Dragon's
But the
Dogma,
Souls games are supposed to be a refuge from the crippling accessibility concessions many other modern games make. Dark Souls 2 doesn't seem to have as much trust in the player. This has an adverse effect on multiple playthroughs of the game since they all start out the same way.
I've done that. I wouldn't say it was unintended.
Dark Souls 1 allowed you to start a new game and quickly build whatever character you like.
If it is intended, it's definitely not as well designed as the Demon Souls areas.
And only opens up more later on. There's a serious lack of useful equipment in the first half of the game, which becomes doubly problematic since players are going to waste Titanite and souls on weapons they're not
That is not true. Whoa, Matthew, what are you talking about? You get the great sword like in the second area.
Is stupefyingly incorrect.
Guts Ultra Great Sword.
Through a comparison. Defining Demon Souls' early game has the tutorial, the first area of each Archstone, and the second area of the first one. It features 38 weapons and 10 spells. Among them there are 4 special weapons, which you can find already enhanced and infused. Defining Dark Souls 2's early game has places you can go to before killing 3 out of its 41 bosses, not counting DLCs, nor the Drang Lake Castle and beyond, and also excluding boss weapons, even though you can get them much more easily and earlier than in Demon Souls, as well as Covenant rewards. It features 66
Dark Souls 2,
weapons,
you can get a lot of good
and 5
weapons
additional
early
infused
on.
weapon
I don't know
variants.
what the fuck he's talking about.
The infused weapons do not come enhanced, as in Demon Souls, but it's exponentially easier and cheaper to upgrade weapons in Dark Souls 2. This is glaringly false. The first non-tutorial boss of Demon Souls is a multi-enemy fight. Would From Software choose to start the first Souls game with such a fight, if they weren't confident in their combat system working in such scenarios? The vast majority of non-boss enemy encounters of the series feature multiple enemies. On screen is a run-through from the Firelink Shrine to the first bonfire of the Undead Burg to prove it. Just because you're bad at handling multiple enemies and can't manage the lock-on properly, doesn't mean the combat was designed for or works uniquely in one-on-one encounters. You can even switch targets by tapping the analog stick.
A video that's like 12 years old or
title
something.
To truly focus on fights against a singular enemy.
This was my chief problem with the Covenants in Dark Souls 1, and nothing has been done to correct it in Dark Souls 2. Take the Company of Champions, for example. The player walks up to a big stone tablet and is immediately prompted to join the Covenant without any explanation.
The exact Covenant he used as an example to substantiate his claim is explained by the wise Cheshire Cat NPC that is located in the same area as the rock. And the game made sure to add one more prompt than usual for when one is to join this Covenant, To
I
make
don't
sure
think
that
that's a
even the most
counter argument. You have to
inattentive,
talk to the
dim-witted
cat
players understand that it will
NPC and
make the
hope
game
you
more
get that
challenging.
dialogue. I mean, I guess if you exhaust
That's
every
enough to prove
NPC's
Matthew is severely
dialogue.
misinformed about the topics he's addressing, and heavily biased, if not outright dishonest. Oh, and one last thing. Before you accuse me of being biased in my response, know that, for a long time, I claimed Demon's Souls was my favorite game of all time.
Many of the merits and ideals of Demon's Souls have faded away in the following entries, starting even as early as the original Dark Souls. After Demon's Souls was a surprise hit, FromSoft set out to make it again, only this time bigger and better. In many ways, Dark Souls was an ambitious sequel. The world was much larger and interconnected, which added a whole new satisfaction to exploration.
See, this is the problem.
The
Okay.
inability to warp
I'm
from
gonna
one area
risk
to another
crashing
forced
this
players into
again.
lengthy journeys, giving the game a sense of
But
isolated
I get he's
adventure
doing
that
a
even
full
Demon's Souls
response to
couldn't
the
offer.
video
The
essay, but you
animations
don't need
were
to
more
play the
polished,
entire
even more
video
of a
essay as you're
satisfying
responding
weight
it.
that this-
Okay. I can't listen to this on stream. This is actually making this worse than just playing Dragon's Dogma at this point. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, like, some of that, it was full-blown Teasmo stuff that was kind of purposely misrepresenting the point. I don't think Matthewmatosis is... Wait, no, didn't he... Isn't he returning to making videos or something? Maybe I'll actually respond to this, I don't know. I thought I heard something like that. Anyway, so my issues with that is, like... I'd say some of it was definitely correct, but when you have to go Teasmo mode to be like, actually, if you talk to the cat 5 times, she says that the rock makes things hard. It's like, even that is not... Like, Matthewmatosis' point is, why the fuck would I join these covenants? Which I think is perfectly fine. I don't really agree, necessarily, that you need a strong reason, unless, obviously, committing to a covenant hurts you in a significant way. Like, I don't think it's that important, really. But... still, that was the point he made, and then the counter argument was, rock, join the rock. Like, what does that have to do with why would I join this? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you could argue it's a why in, like, the literal, well, I don't know what this does sense, but in terms of, like, what's my motivation, how's this tie into the world building, you know what I mean, that kind of thing, that's definitely one of the weaker elements of lore shit, considering that people love the lore so much, especially in Dark Souls 2. Like, I know I've told this story on stream 20 times, so I will not tell it again. But the most fun I had playing multiplayer in a Souls game was the Bell Tower Covenant in Dark Souls 2. Basically just spin to winning. I killed like 40 people with the running light attack of the Black Knight Halberd. That's what I did. Like, I didn't need, like, a story motivation or lore to do that. I just thought it would be fun. And it was fun. So that's that's my perspective. I'm just saying, like, that video, that was getting way too Teasmo for me. Especially, like, the point about the Demon's Souls world design. Like, Demon's Souls... Like, I think Dark Souls, even though it's a, you know, unfinished game, and is less consistently good than Demon's Souls or Bloodborne, I do think Dark Souls is a better game because it has higher highs. It has lower lows, but it has higher highs. I mean, I wouldn't say it has lower lows than any game in the series, but definitely compared to Demon's Souls and Bloodborne, it has lower lows. But it definitely has higher highs than any of the other Souls games, which is why it's my favorite one. Dark Souls 2 is definitely the most invader-friendly game, and I think that's why its PvP was so well-liked. Yeah. Like, it's not like... That's why I feel so in the middle. Like, I'm not this crazy contrarian that thinks Dark Souls 2 is you know, a flawed masterpiece or something. I just will never forget. It was one of my first big gaming disappointments. Like, you know, Dark Souls 1 was instantly one of my favorite games of all time as soon as I played it. And then I played Dark Souls 2, and I'm like, wow, that was shallow. Not soulless. Maybe at the time I thought even that far that it's soulless, but it's not soulless. But it is, like, it clearly didn't give a fuck about a lot of the things that were given fucks about the first game in terms of world building, lore, this, like, the fucking world design is complete nonsense. But yeah, the openness, like, that was the point I agreed with the most, was that Dark Souls 2 is the most open in the series. It's not as straightforward as the Nexus and Demon's Souls, but it was obviously inspired by the Nexus and Demon Souls, which is why that's a weird point. Like, I don't know why Matthewmatosis was saying that, like, linearity is a problem with 2. It's definitely not. It's definitely not. I would like to see if Matthewmatosis is making videos again. He should make one on Elden Ring, I think, definitely. I'm missing every fucking hit! Alright, so he plays a long part
game
of
in the series that needs
Matosis'
no
intro.
so,
Right. Let me skip ahead a little.
It's not innovative. Many of the notable features that people assign to Dark Souls originated in Demon Souls and were simply brought across because they worked last time. The goal of Dark Souls wasn't innovation, it was refinement. FromSoft already had a formula that worked, and they set out to exploit.
You know, I don't think we watched the whole thing, but now that I'm listening to this, I'm pretty sure I did watch at least part of this video on stream. And I think I listened to the whole thing, you know, a decade ago or something.
Dark Souls introduced to the series a brilliantly realized interconnected world, which was not just innovative in relation to its predecessor, but to gaming as a whole. The closest thing we had to Dark Souls 1's world design was the Kingsfield and Shadow Tower series, and maybe a few games from the Metroid, Castlevania, and Zelda series.
I get the feeling this is going to be... I don't know. I'm a little conflicted on this myself. I guess it depends on your definition of innovative. But yeah, I would agree. Like, what's the fine line between innovation and iteration? And I guess, again, I don't want to play devil's advocate for Matthewmatosis, since, again, like, his style of videos were not overly analytical, super long vids. They were more short and to the point. Like, if Matthewmatosis is referring to the gameplay, yeah, I mean, the Souls games never innovate on, like, the core combat mechanics, really. They usually just add bells and whistles. But if we're talking about world design, yeah, I would argue Dark Souls 1's world design is innovative. Yeah, I'm with Firelink Conspiracy on this one.
This innovation alone is more than enough to disprove Matthew's arguments, but it's merely the top of an iceberg. The inability to warp between areas until the player reaches the middle of the game is also remarkable and very risky. Has complaints about the lack of...
Yeah, I mean, the amount of people who probably got filtered at the time by Blight Town is like a crazy amount, I'm sure.
Fast travel were sure to come. Dark Souls fully reworked the healing system of Demon Souls through the bonfires and the Estus Flask, which solved a few major issues, such as players having to farm for healing items, players having access to piles of easily obtainable healing items.
Okay, but this is where I would debate, is that innovation or just iteration? Like, all they do is make it so instead of you being able to have 1 million healing items on your person, you have a limited amount. Is that innovation?
The Covenant system added a whole new dimension to online interaction. The Forest Hunters Covenant introduced the concept of a PvP-focused area, as players who stepped deep into the Darkroot Garden had open to special invasions, which rewards the invaders not with the Dark Souls equivalents to ephemeral ice stones, but, primarily, with a variety of upgrade materials. The Warriors of Sunlight Covenant incentivized cooperation by providing players with a new branch of offensive miracles, the 3 types of lightning spears. The Path of the Dragon inspires dueling.
I don't know. This is... What this strikes me as is what the developer's intent versus how did the players actually use these things. In reality, most people barely engaged with any of this. I mean, I'm not going to say that it necessarily matters completely. I think it's definitely... There's nothing wrong with appealing to the 1%. Like, I think appealing to the 1% of players with certain things often creates better games. Like... You know, there's a lot of people who enjoy... I don't know why I always bring up Kojima games, but I just think of, like, Metal Gear Solid 2, the ice cube that melts in real time. Like, no one's gonna fucking notice that, but the one guy who notices that appreciates that, right? I just think with Covenants, though, the way that it was implemented in the game, only people who have already played the game an insane amount of time engage with most of them, right? If you don't care about the multiplayer, which is slop, honestly, in my opinion, I like the novelty of invasions, but invasions as anything other than their intended purpose, which was just to fuck with someone, basically, to make the game harder, then it just kind of falls apart because the combat mechanics are not that good.
And provided the players with a new mechanic in the Dragon transformation. The Gravelord Servants Covenant was a weird and experimental mechanic in which players who are in the second game cycle and beyond can be cursed, effectively making them experience a hardcore difficulty mode for the game, until the player cursing them is defeated, and all recipients of the curse can join his rolls to challenge him. The curse comes...
Yeah, I never fucking... I never experienced that shit. Not even one time.
Out of nowhere, had no fault of the targets, and there is no way to block it. It was a rather risky, potentially controversial mechanic to implement. The blades of the dark.
Well, okay, hold on, wait a minute. It's risky in the sense that it's a waste of development time to put something for New Game Plus like this. Like, it's not risky because you have to beat the game. Like, how is that risky?
Covenants also serves to embolden the role-playing aspect of Dark Souls. Players could now act in affiliation with characters from the game. Dark Souls introduced plunging attacks, a significant addition to the player's moveset, while simultaneously adding more vertical.
What? Okay, alright. Plunging attack is a significant addition to the player's moveset. You mean the thing that almost never gets used after the, like, 3 or 4 hour mark in the game? What the fuck are you talking about? What? How do you write unironically in your script that the plunging attack is a significant addition to the player's moveset? Come on now. This is what I'm saying. This is dishonest. What? You can't say that.
To its level design, so the new move is frequently usable. Dark Souls introduced the mid-roll, which paired with the innovative poise system, massively expanded viable possibilities for builds and equipment setups. In Demon Souls, there is zero reason not to light roll. In Dark Souls, the possibilities are endless, and even fat rolling can be the most optimal.
Actually, that's what he said there is not true. I think in Demon Souls, fat rolling actually had a lot of invincibility frames. I mean, it was really slow, but I think it actually, unless I'm getting my games mixed up, I'm pretty sure Demon Souls was weird in that fat rolling had a lot of invincibility frames, but whatever, anyway.
Strategy in some scenarios. The humanity mechanic is also more versatile than its Demon Souls equivalent, as it enables players who aren't interested in cooperation to spend their humanities in upgrades to their healing capacity, or perhaps to use them to heal in emergency situations and in invasions. There's the armor upgrade system, which, as explained by Miyazaki, was introduced as a way of ensuring armor remains equally valuable as the game progresses. It was discontinued.
Yeah, he completely went back on that. Armor becomes increasingly more shitty as the series goes on. At least it was good in Dark Souls, I guess.
Continued in later games, as it was an experiment, which they deemed unsatisfactory, due to how difficult it was to fine-tune. Alternate solutions were then employed. This list does not contain refinements to mechanics introduced in Demon Souls, just innovations and substantial expansions. I must again express that Matthew's opening argument genuinely baffles me in how.
Yeah, Black Myth Wukong, it does set itself apart a bit in the sense that, like, it's similar to Stellar Blade for different reasons. But both Stellar Blade and Black Myth Wukong were, like, in between a Souls-like and a standard action game. They both have some Souls-like elements to them, but all of your character abilities are much more, like, aggression-focused. Like, you can press on the attack. It's not like how the Souls series, as it went on, was all dodge roll, dodge roll, dodge roll, R1, dodge roll, dodge roll. Whereas, like, Black Myth Wukong, you had all these abilities. You had the fucking Shadow Clones. You could turn into a mini-boss. You could, you had, like, all these different. You had, like, different stances and stuff, like Neo has different stances. You had a lot of abilities where you could press on the advance, like, you can be aggressive, and then you go on the defensive once you've exhausted your resources. But if I remember right, they were on cooldowns, so you just go defensive for a while, and then you go back on the offense, defensive for a while. It was actually a pretty decent combat system.
The rune system, blood gems, the insight mechanic. It made multi-phase bosses the norm, massively refining and expanding their designs. Enemies can steal blood echoes upon your death. I could go on. According to the main point Matthew makes in his video, none of these classify as innovations.
I don't know. I think you might be reading into it a little bit too much. The general idea is that they became less innovative over time, which is incredibly true. I mean, you just look at what Elden Ring is. Fuck. I don't know. I'm not going to ramble about Elden Ring for the millionth time. But Elden Ring felt like, you know, we've given up. This is Dark Souls 3 too, but it's a giant open world, so normal will just gargle all over its cock for the rest of time, because they love dog shit open world slop. And that's exactly what happened. They just made Dark Souls 3 again. It's better. I think it's better than Dark Souls 3, to be clear. I think Elden Ring actually is, because I hate Dark Souls 3. But in hindsight, he definitely was right that each entry was less innovative than the last. Like, Bloodborne is, unless you count Sekiro, which usually people don't when we're talking about the Souls-like series. Bloodborne was probably the last time they actually tried to innovate.
This is what really sets Demon's Souls apart from the rest of the series. Early in its development, the project was assumed by many in FromSoft to already be a failure. Maybe a demoralizing way to think, but also liberating in a sense. That assumption is the main reason why director Hidetaka
Dark Souls 3 had much better bosses. Okay, you have absolute dog shit taste. Are you kidding me? Did you like when you had to roll? Did you like the next boss when you had to roll again? Did you like the next boss where you had to roll again with slightly different timing? Oh yeah, they had such great bosses. Yeah, when I think of Dark Souls 3, I think of the time I press circle, and then I press circle another time after that, and then I press circle another time. Yeah, great bosses. You approach every single one exactly the same way, except for like the fucking curse-rotted Greatwood and what's the fuck? The guy who ate Gwendolyn. Those are the only two bosses I can really think of where just spamming circle, which even in the latter case, you can spam circle for most of it. Just like the arrow attack from the sky, you're better off running than dodging. But almost everything in that game is solved with, I press circle at the right time instead of the wrong time. That's exactly why the series went to shit. That's exactly why the series went to shit. No, Dark Souls 3 does not have... Hell fucking no, it does not have the best boss. I bet you love Dark Souls 2 bosses. Dark Souls 2 bosses are also press circle to dodge. You just play your dog shit circle, press circle to win game. I'll play good games. Dark Souls 3 has a cool gameplay mechanic where you get to barely dodge really cool enemies, and the game repeats that for 20 hours. Exactly. There is no unique approach to anything. Oh, yeah, then there's the fucking rip-off Demon Souls boss, which I don't know why From Software is obsessed with that shit. What's his name? Yorm the Giant? Like, at least with the Demon Souls boss, it's a giant flying manta ray that's shooting homing spikes at you. Like, you're like, oh my god, what the fuck's happening? It's cool as hell. Yorm the Giant, they just do the same thing. And then Elden Ring, they do the same thing again with the giant snake boss. Like, just fuck off. Fuck off. And that's like one of the most memorable bosses in Dark Souls 3 is I just did a Demon Souls boss again.
There is a quote by Miyazaki that directly contradicts how Matthew presented his argument. Quote, "With Demon Souls, of course, and while we worked on Dark Souls 1, the expectations around us were still pretty low. All around us, there was always the idea that there is no way something like this will sell." End quote.
What do you mean? Wait, did he say that contradicts? That supports what he said. I'm not rewinding. Whatever.
Miyazaki told the interviewer that Dark Souls was also highly experimental and risky, and wasn't expected to sell.
Well, that's because Demon Souls didn't sell that well, to be fair. Like, this is a semantics game. Like, yes, you can say what he said also applies to Dark Souls, which you'd be right. But that's just because Demon Souls didn't sell like crazy. Dark Souls was hyped up by every game journalist outlet. And that was back when game journalists still had a tiny shred of clout, because YouTubers hadn't, like, taken over everything, you know? So every game journalist hyped up Dark Souls, and I mean, people loved it. What can you say? You know, if Demon Souls had the same attention, it probably wouldn't have gotten as popular for other reasons, but that's part of the reason.
Demon Souls turns its back on both of those ideas and cuts your health in half as soon as you die. As if that isn't enough, repeated deaths will increase enemy stats and eventually spawn additional Black Phantoms to make the stage even tougher. Now, you might think this is a poor mechanic. There are some very sound, logical arguments against it. I'm not saying that every game should work this way, but hopefully you can understand that I find this refreshing for the simple fact that it's different from everything else. This, for me at least, was the real appeal of Demon Souls. Time and again, they threw out the rulebook and just did whatever they felt like.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think that's basically what happens to everyone who plays enough games, is that you end up liking a game not because it's better than other games, but because it's different than other games. And that's actually similar to why I like Dragon's Dogma, even though you see me rage at it all the time. Just the simple fact that it plays differently than other action RPGs really is a big part of the appeal. I mean, it's still is a good game. It's just you're watching me play the hardest part of the game that is on also hard mode, which is infuriating if you're not properly prepared, which I wasn't. I definitely wasn't.
Conventional wisdom says that struggling players should be offered a helping hand, not pushed down a well. Conventional wisdom says that a boss should be killed by the player, not themselves. Conventional wisdom says that secrets should be secret, not pointed out by someone else. Conventional wisdom says that important NPCs and vendors are off limits, not murdered while the player isn't looking. Conventional wisdom says that the final boss should be an epic showdown, a test of the player's skills, not a pathetic...
I think I already read about this when I reacted to this on stream, but this doesn't count because False King Allen is obviously the final boss, not this. But whatever, it's fine. Like,
And even a weapon and other things, behind a series of maze-like, extremely difficult areas, whose progression is far from intuitive, and which aren't part of the main progression of the game, and the Winter Lanterns, which are enemies that turn Bloodborne into a survival horror game whenever they appear.
I hate these fucking... Hate, it's just hate, absolute fucking hate these fucking scumfuck enemies.
It's the boss fights that stick out the most, with 4 of the 5 archdemons clearly being designed to provide a memorable experience above all else. Even False King Allant, the most traditional of the 5, has an incredibly punishing grab which actually de-levels the player character, something the series hasn't seen since.
I've never gotten hit by this tech, by the way. I just want to point out. I've probably beaten the game 4 times, never got hit by that tech.
This kind of experimentation doesn't always work. There's not many people out there who'll defend the encounter with the Dragon God, but an occasional failure is to be expected if a game is stepping outside the norm so much.
Yeah, that boss is like unbelievably bad though. Like the only boss, this is the second worst boss in Souls game history, with Beta Chaos obviously being number 1. But this is the second worst.
Priscilla begs us to leave her home. Unlike with Astrea, the player is not mandated to kill her, and can simply exit the area. Dark Souls 2 has similarly innovative, unconventional bosses, such as Vendrick, who's entirely passive unless provoked. And as we meet this fallen, legendary king, it's one of the most memorable moments in the entire series to those that weren't spoiled. There's also the Burnt Ivory King, which we can either face alone, or accompanied by his own knights, which we can back on by finding them throughout the DLC.
I think that was pretty well done.
To understand why this is a bad thing,
it.
we have to confront a hard truth that few people seem to want to face about the Souls games, including FromSoft themselves, but here it is. The combat is nothing remarkable. Before you get your codpiece in it...
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the strongest point in this video, even if it sounds controversial. Like, honestly, that is... I mean, the number 1 critique of the Souls games is that the combat is nothing remarkable, but it's also kind of the point at the same time. But it's also why so many Souls-likes have gotten stale so fast, because they have to contend with the problem of how do you keep the gameplay mechanics simple while also maintaining like the core of what a Souls-like is. And the closer you are to a Souls-like, the more it'll be seen as just a shittier version of FromSoft's games. So they have to, you know, implement other action game mechanics like Black Myth Wukong or Stellar Blade or whatever, right?
The stamina system puts other action RPGs to shame, the animations are great, and the controls are tight, but in terms of actual complexity, there's not much going on. There's not much depth, and that wouldn't be a problem, except that the series has increasingly leaned on its action elements more and more as time has gone by.
And then he begins to espouse one of the most annoying arguments he'll keep bringing up throughout the video, with the smugest possible delivery. That...
Okay, autist, but he's right though. I'm sure this is going to be a left-wing meme equivalent of debunking by having like 5 million paragraphs of anecdote shit that will not, absolutely will not refute the core of what he's saying. This is going to be the actually part of the video, I guarantee it, because that part of Matthewmatosis' video is literally the best age part, the part that probably I've heard brought up a million times. So there's no way, like, I already know this is going to be a bunch of cope. I already know. Nothing he said was wrong. Absolutely nothing he said was wrong. So this should be interesting. I know he's hyper-analyzing every area in NPC, but most of what he's saying is lore, dude. The average player doesn't really care about the lore. Well, my issue is that so much of this kind of feels like some of it is not against Firelink conspiracy because the examples he brings up are the ones that would be relevant at the time because Matthewmatosis' video is so old. So when Matthewmatosis' video, I think it came out before Dark Souls 3 and all the games after, right? So, you know, if we're talking about Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring, the video becomes more true. But at the time it was released, these counter arguments are fine, I think, right? I think the video has aged well in the sense that the things he's complaining about have gotten worse, for sure. They were more debatable at the time of the video's release, as Firelink Conspiracy is going through here. But in hindsight, after Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring, his critiques are much more true, because they have stagnated, absolutely.
According to him, there is nothing remarkable about the combat mechanics of Dark Souls. A fact even the developers don't want to face, only Matthew is brave enough to do it. And there are plenty of other games we can play.
Okay, see, this is the smug redditor part. At the time of Matthewmatosis' video, everyone was deep-throating the Souls games. Cox. I mean, that's just a fact. Yes, since people have become more openly critical, not normies because of Elden Ring, but, you know, gamers have felt more comfortable with critiquing the series in the years since. But at the time, he was saying that for a fucking reason, because no one wanted to talk shit.
If he wants a better, more complex version of what Dark Souls does, he really is the final boss of mid-witted, pretentious video essayists. As a reminder, his video was posted in 2017, but I'm sure he couldn't have been thinking about those, as they are offensively simplistic and easy for the most part. And Ninja Gaiden and Monster Hunter are way too different to be apt comparisons. He never attempts to explain it, and does not provide even a single example to compare Dark Souls to. That's because there are none. The combat of Dark Souls is wholly unique, and the lack of intricate combos and supplementary mechanics like that work in its favor, never against it. This holds true even for later installments of the extended series.
Okay, but you're completely ignoring the second part of his statement that he says the simplistic combat is elevated by the level design and the player choice, the bosses, things like that. That's all true. All of that is true. If you took Dark Souls core combat mechanics and you put it in a Ubisoft game, it'd be one of the worst games you've ever played. Now, again, I think the rest of what he's saying is fine because, again, this is for all the
cocksuckers on V.
I don't know why he has a cult on V for some reason. But the problem with the videos, there's nothing wrong with making a long video inherently. Like, when I shit on the Mauler stuff, it's because so much of it gets to the autism slop, which this video has gotten to the autism slop, where you're either purposely or not purposely misunderstanding your opponent's points because you're on the spectrum. But for people who do understand how human beings work and intent, it's pretty clear to me what the point of the points is. I don't have to misinterpret anything. You know, in fact, it's better if you, either play devil's advocate or steel man your opponent's position and then dismantle it from that perspective. Playing the whole game of I don't know what he's talking about. No, stop, Redditor, please. This is embarrassing. Anyway, nothing that he said was wrong, and you don't even need to compare it to other game series to point out that it's simplistic. You can name the amount of attacks in Demon Souls and Dark Souls on like one hand. You have light attack, heavy attack, jumping attack, kick. If you count like two-handing, you can two-hand weapons for a different moveset. You can block. I mean, yes, obviously each weapon type has different moves, which are important. Like the frame data on that, the hitboxes, the etc. is what makes the weapons unique. But the actual combat mechanics are very simple. All you have basically what any player is going to be using 90% of the time is light attack and heavy attack. That you're going to dodge, obviously you're going to heal, you might cast a spell or something, but that's all you do for the entire game. The reason it's good is because of the level design, the enemies. That's why it's good. It's not good because of the core combat mechanics. That's what he said, and that's correct. That is correct. So I don't know why he's mad. I don't know why Firelink Conspiracy is mad when that's actually self-evident, I would say. But I mean, obviously, I'm the type of chud. I don't need to make a big autistic video to justify my points. If you were going to make a big autistic video, you should provide many examples of your points. But debating this point is not a good look, I gotta say. I don't know. This is... Souls games do have simple combat. You can't... You know, it's like asking for a proof, a mathematical proof on 2 + 2 = 4. Stop wasting our fucking time. Like, this is just... I don't know. This is why I was saying earlier, like, this just feels dishonest. What do you... How much of this is... Hold on. How much of this... Okay. So it looks like he switches... No, because he's going to talk about Bloodborne Souls combat, weapon arts. So he literally... I think he's on this point for the next 16 minutes, I'm assuming. Maybe it ends here. So maybe another 13 minutes. It's like saying weapon arts are broken, or, you know, Bloodborne has like rally or whatever the fuck. That doesn't change the point. You have a certain amount of inputs. It doesn't add complexity. Most of what Souls is pattern recognition and memorization and reflexes. That's 90% of the skill in Souls. You memorize the boss's moveset, you press circle at the right time. So why is there a giant wall of red at Copium to deny that obvious fact about the series? Okay. So I can see in this video, looking at the chapter feature, that he talks about, like, right here he talks about, like, weapon arts from Dark Souls 3. Like, you could have a video about all the broken bullshit in Elden Ring, and it could be this entire video length. That doesn't matter. Like, that's not added. I mean, yes, the amount of they weren't even called weapon arts. What were they called in Elden Ring? I don't remember. The amount of that shit in Elden Ring is complexity by definition, in the sense that you have many choices. But it doesn't add depth. It adds 0 depth at all. It's the same level of depth. So I'm not listening to the rest of this. That's my point. If you have a problem with one of the strongest, if not the strongest point in Matthewmatosis' video, then I feel like this is just a personal vendetta for whatever reason. A guy who hadn't made a video in many years at this point. Yeah, I'm going to be debunked. Yeah, I don't know. Like, this is why, again, the from drones. Yeah, you remind me of a lot of the V discourse. It's like they are correct in that, like, the Souls-like community feels cult-like in that they keep denying any flaws with their genre. The genre is stale. The only thing carrying Souls-like games is that they're the only genre of video games in the modern times that have the balls to be consistently difficult. And once the novelty of a game being hard wears off, as it did for me, then there's almost no reason to play it, because so many of them play the same.